So we ended with Genesis chapter 4, verse 17. And we're going to pick up at Genesis 4:18. We're going to read the remainder of this chapter. Of course, I'm going to read it first in the New Living Translation, and then we're going to go through it with the King James Version. All right. Just forewarning y'all, I'm going to mess up these names here and there. All right.
I'll call you out.
Yeah. Hey.
I'm kidding.
All right, here we go. Enoch had a son named Arad. Arad became the father of Mekuyaal, and Mekuyaal became the father of Methuselah. Methuselah became the father of Lamech. Lamech married two women. The first was the name Adah, and the second was Zerah. Adah gave birth to Jabal, who was the first of those who raised livestock and lived in tents. And his brother's name was Jubal, the first of all who played the harp and flute. Lamech, other's wife, Zala, gave birth to a son of Tubal Cain. He became an expert in forging tools of bronze and iron. Tubal Cain had a sister named Naamah. One day, Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zala, "Hear my voice, listen to me, you wives of Lamech. I have killed a man who attacked me, a young man who wounded me. If someone who kills Cain is punished 7 times, then the one who kills me will be punished 77 times." And Adam had sexual relations with his wife again, and she gave birth to another son. She named him Seth, for she said, "God has granted me another son in place of Abel, whom Cain killed." When Seth grew up, he had a son and named him Enosh. At that time, people first began to worship Yahuwah by name. All right, back to 18. Going to 18. Biggest thing I want to do here today, through a lot of this stuff is self-explanatory. I'm not going to go as deep, but I want to go into the names. It's real important because names really meant something back then. Okay, so it's always good to actually just go into the names. So we went into Enoch last week. We're going to do it again just to refresh. And this Enoch again was Cain's son. It was not the Enoch of Seth's lineage. Okay. All right. So looking at Enoch, all right, that is H2585. Okay. Kanat. All right, is how you say it in Hebrew. And it says, I'm going to go a little bit deeper here. It says, properly to narrow, okay? Figuratively, to initiate or discipline, okay? Dedicate, train up, all right? So as we kind of see here, it's more of along the lines of, like it says, discipline, someone who's thorough, someone who is dedicated to things, okay? Or can train up or is trained up, okay? I'm gonna go a little bit deeper. It also says to be narrow, by implication, to throttle, or reflectively, to choke oneself to death by rope, hang self, strangle. Okay, so that's a whole nother end of it. All right. We're gonna go back out. That was Enoch. We're going to go to Enoch's son, Arad. Okay. Arad, that is H5897. Arad. All right. Again, Arad means fugitive as well. Fugitive. We're going to go a little bit deeper. All right. Remember, this is Cain's son. And it says from an unused root meaning to sequester itself. Okay. Fugitive again. Arad, the name of a place near Palestine, also of a Canaanite and an Israelite. But we're going to go into sequester and see exactly what sequester means. Again, originally it says sequester itself. All right. So the definition. So isolate oneself. All right. Hide oneself away. Shut oneself away. Seclude oneself. Cut or shut oneself off. Set oneself apart. Segregate oneself. So on and so forth. Arad, Cain's son, we already know Cain was a vagabond. He was a wanderer. Okay, so Enoch gave his son a name Arad, which is to isolate oneself. So that's very interesting to know. Okay. As again, back then names were very, very important and meaningful, and they typically played out their name. Okay. All right. Arad beget Mekuyaal. All right. Mekuyaal. His name meant smitten of Elohim or God. Okay. Mekuyaal or Mekuyaal, how they said it. We're going to go into the first half of it. Okay. It is H4229, the first part of the name. In Hebrew, they use a lot of abbreviations. Okay. Just like the name of the Most High is Yahuwah. Okay. They abbreviate names and words. So Yahuwah, most people also use Yah. Okay. So Yahuwah and then Yah. So this is going to break up the name of Mekuyaal. Okay. So the first half is Makah. Okay. Makah. All right. Primitive root. Properly to stroke or rub. Okay. By implication, to erase. All right. Also to smooth as if with oil. That is grease or make fat. Also to touch. That is reach out, abolish, blot out, destroy, full of marrow, put out, reach unto, utterly wipe away, or utterly wipe out. So these are names of their son of Cain's sons. All right, that was the first half of Mekuyaal. And of course, anytime you hear all or el, okay, all or el, that means strength. Okay, it's strength as adjective mighty, especially the Almighty, but use also of any deity. God, little case G, God, goodly, great, idol, mighty, mighty one, power, strong, names in L. Okay, so it does go a little bit deeper. And I guess I'll go into that H352, and it kind of goes along the same lines, strength. Hence, anything strong, especially a chief, also a ram from its strength. Pilaster, that's like a wall, okay, a strong wall, as strong support. An oak or other strong trees, mighty man, lintel, oak, post, ram, tree. Okay. So that was Mekuyaal. Okay. Mekuyaal beget Methuselah. All right. Methuselah going into H4967. The first half of it means with the relative interpost, man who is of God. Okay, Methuselah. All right. So the first half of that name is Moth, properly an adult, as of full length. By implication, a man only in the plural. Few. So talking about plural people in general in a group. Few friends, men, persons, small. So the collective of people. Just because I'm teaching don't mean I can't see you. All right. Oop, I done got out of it. Let me go back. Mm-hmm. A little bit deeper to that first side of his name, okay? Mathai. But it means to extend, okay, properly extend of time, but used only verbally, especially with other particles prefix, either relative or interrogative. Long when, okay? The second part, again, is the same thing. The last part of that name is all, okay? We're talking about strength, okay? Mighty, all right? Power, leader, okay? Things of that nature. All right. So reading that verse one more time in the King James Version, it says, and unto Enoch was born Arad, and Arad beget Ma'uyaal, and Ma'uyaal beget Methuselah, and Methuselah beget Lamech. Okay, um, Lamech is pretty much just Lamech. All right, going into Lamech. Okay, again, there's another Lamech that's on the in the Seth lineage. Okay, this is just explaining that this is not the same Lamech. Okay, but his father is as the name is just as close as Methuselah, but it says right here, Genesis 5:21. It says when Enoch was 65, okay, years old, he became the father. I'm sorry, not the father, but the son. He became the father of Methuselah. All right. So going to Genesis 4:19. All right, and it says Lamech married two women. The first was named Adah, and the second was named Zillah. All right. We're going to look into the reference they has for this. It's not much that it's not many references that we're going to actually use, but it says the reference for that verse saying that he has two wives, and it says then in YAHUAH Elohim said, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper who is just right for him. And these are interesting if y'all want to talk about this, because it's really doesn't um because that's one of the big issues. Yes, it's not good to have two wives, but at the same time he never really condemned. So that's a conversation that goes on, that's been going on forever. And it says Genesis 2:24, it says this explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. All right. Matthew 19, verse 4 through 6. And it says, Haven't you read the scriptures? Yahushua replied. They recorded that from the beginning Elohim made them male and female. And he said, this explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. Since they are no longer two but one, let no one split apart what Yahuwah or Elohim has joined together. So that's an interesting verse there. All right, and the last one, 19 and 8. And it says, Yahushua replied, Moses permitted divorce only as a concession to your hard hearts, but it was not what Elohim had originally intended. Okay? So it never really said anything, but also, for one, with me, where I stand with it, is no way I would want to deal with more than one female. Whether
so if they weren't so cantankerous, you might have another one. Is that what you're saying?
But from the beginning, they was just that. So I don't think they would change, you know. So y'all got to catch me first. All right. Genesis chapter 4, verse 20. Okay, and it says, King James Version, and it says, Adah beard Jabal. He was the father of such as dwelled in tents, and of such as have cattle. We're going to look at the reference of the father. Okay, the father. All right, and it says his brother's name was Jubal. It's just giving another reference of what we're actually about to go into. Pretty much these references that I'm about to read here is just establishing the people who started things. Like I said, in this verse it says Jabal was the first to raise livestock and live in tents. Okay, we're going into Genesis 25:27. As the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter. He was an outdoorsman, but Jacob had a quiet temperament, preferring to stay at home. All right. So Esau was a outdoorsman. He was a hunter. Okay. And Jacob preferred to stay at home. So that's saying something. We're going to go back into that here in just a second. All right. Jeremiah 35, 9 and 10. Jeremiah 35, 9 and 10. We're talking about the tents, dwelling in a tent. All right. And it says, we haven't built houses or owned vineyards or farmed or planted crops. We have lived in tents and have fully obeyed all the commandments of Jonadab, our ancestor. Okay. Again, talking about the tents. All right. He was a little more specific here, where he says lived in tents and fully obeyed all the commandments. And then we're going to go to Hebrew 11, verse 9. Hebrews 11, verse 9. And it says, and even when he reached the land Elohim promised him, he lived there by faith, for he was like a foreigner living in tents. And so did Isaac and Jacob, who inherited the same promise. All right, so now we went through 3 different verses. Last week we noticed when they was talking about cities wasn't the best thing, right? Cities was man provoked, okay? but apparently it's something that had to happen. Okay, it was more man provoked. I actually kind of talked about how if we look at every major civilization, thank you, civilization, okay, um, they're going to have a lot of old artifacts and walls and things of their gods because that's what was followed in those cities. Okay, Yahuwah, his word went through the actual word being spread. That's why he wanted his people to scatter and spread his name. Okay, um, it wasn't it wasn't placed on those walls and things of that nature. Only, only the ancient deity gods of those civilizations. All right. So this is actually saying that the land that Abraham was promised, okay, it was not only faith, but it's just already it's already setting forth of his people being foreigners, no matter where they went throughout time. Okay, um, or vagabonds to an extent, um, knowing that their true home is not going to be anywhere of this world until the Messiah come back. Okay. All right. Before I go on, I'm gonna go back to 20. Um, Jabal. All right. We know that he lived in tents, but also as we look, he had livestock. Okay. He was the first to do livestock. What do we know about shepherds? They're special. So that certain personality trait that shepherds have, and then not only that, okay, he dwelled in tents. One of the things I forgot to mention, like he said, Jacob dwelled in tents. A lot of people always ask the question in the story of Esau and Jacob because it was some deception in there, especially when you only read the regular the Genesis and not Jasher or Jubilees. People are like, well, he tricked his way into getting, you know, um, the birthright and all of that good stuff. But what you will find out is that Jacob lived in the tents, constantly studied, while Esau didn't want to study and was always out hunting. Okay, so Abraham told Rivka, make sure that Jacob gets the birthright. Most people don't know that, okay? Because Jacob was dwelling in the tent, but also he went and lived, okay, with Seth and another person for a little bit, okay? So a lot of times that's not understood because Genesis does not fully explain that, okay? So again, what it's saying here, all right, Jubal, okay, or Jabal, all right, he was not only a shepherd, but he dwelled in tents. He lived in tents, okay? So that's saying something. All right.
Did you say that Abraham said, make sure?
Mm-hmm.
I thought.
He was still alive. It doesn't.
Wasn't that the one where he put hair on his?
Yes. So that's
So
Abraham's is Isaac's dad. Abraham is Isaac's dad, and then yeah, so Isaac was going blind at that time.
Isaac.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Jacob, yeah,
Right. Okay. So Abraham
told
said
Rivka. Mm-hmm.
for okay.
Yep.
Well, it was prophesied over Rebecca that the older will serve.
And yes, and it was also prophesied. Yep. Yep. And I forgot about that part too. Yep. It was also prophesied. Yep. All right. Now going to 21. All right. And it says, we talk about the other son, okay, of Adah. And it says, And his brother's name was Jubal. Okay. He was the father of all such has handled the harp and organ. Okay. Organ are the wind instruments. It's not, they didn't have piano organs. So that's the flutes and things that, yep, yep, yep. So, all right. And this part is basically just filling in before we get to the next part, these verses here. There's nothing too deep. Genesis 4, verse 22. And it says, and Zillah, she also bared Tubal-Cain and instructed of every artificer of brass and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. All right. All right. Now we're talking about the instruments, okay? Tubal-Cain. All right. Tubal-Cain, he was the first to make uh, metal instruments as far as tools, okay? Tools, weapons at this time. This is the time where, this is right about the time where Jared, all right, on the other lineage of, on the other side of Shem, where the angels came down. So this is about the time where they learned how to do these things again with the the music and the yeah, music and things of that nature. Okay, making tools. So all right, we got Numbers 31:22. Anything made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, tin, and lead. Okay. Genesis 4:23. Okay. And this is confusing. And I tried to do some deeper study on this part. Um, uh, but it's a lot more that I have to go into and try to dig up. It is confusing. But in Jasher, I'll explain a little bit about Jasher here in just a second. All right, Genesis chapter 4, verse 23. And it says, Lamech said unto his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech, hearken unto my speech, for I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. Okay. Again, it says, I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. Okay. All right. We're going to go to underneath here. It says, I have slain a man to my wounding, or I would slay a man in my wound, etc. We're going to click on Genesis 49:6 and see what they're saying here. Genesis 49:6. And it says, may I never join in their meetings. May I never be a party to their plans, for in their anger they murdered men and they crippled oxen just for sport. Um, this story here is a prophesy of Jacob to his sons Levi and Simeon. This is what he say about Levi and Simeon, because Levi and Simeon, their sister, okay, their sister was pretty much raped. So they went and killed this whole town of people because of what they did. The prince did to their sister. Okay. Um, so he prophesied.
Did it under that beguiling. They said, "Oh, if everybody all the men get circumcised,
yes, Yep.
You can have her, and then
Yep.
they all got circumcised.
Yes. So yes.
They went in, so it was under the cover of
Deception.
Yeah, that's
Yep. The cover of deception. So again, after that prince had um, taking their sister unwarningly, he came to Jacob and said he got his dad and him to go over to Jacob to sit with Jacob and talk about actually having um, what was her name, Dinah Dinah for a wife. Okay, and the brothers didn't like it. It was just a big discussion. It goes deep into it in the Jasher. It was big discussion, and then the brothers were like, "Well," they talked to their dad and was like, "Well, if they circumcise," and that's what they all agreed on, is if all those men, because they're not of the lineage of Jacob, or they're not in that family. So everybody under Abraham was supposed to be circumcised. If you're going to join in, whether you're a servant or not, you had to be a male, had to be circumcised to be a part. Okay, so that's what they said. Every male in that town, or that in that town, had to be circumcised. And when they agreed and then went and got circumcised, they waited the next day while they was all in their pain, and they went and slayed the whole town. Okay? So this prophecy here, okay, is Jacob saying or talking about and referring to what they did, and this is what's going to come of it. Okay? He said, "May I never join in their meetings. May I never be a party to their plans. For in their anger they murdered men, and they cripple oxen just for sport." Okay? All right. So he's saying they crippled oxen just for sport. All right. Um, in the Go ahead.
Then later, the tribe of Levi became priests.
But that doesn't mean they don't. It always they're always going to get their, just like they're always going to get what's their judgment. Okay, this is a further judgment. Okay, um, but yeah, they always get the judgment. It comes around. All right. So in the book of Jasher, you had Lamech. He was old at this time, and he was blind. Okay, well, not fully blind. His eyes was given him. Okay, um, but he took a son out. Apparently, they were hunting, and what it said that Tubal-Cain was young. All right, it said that Tubal-Cain was young, and he saw something um, in afar, and he told his father to pull back his bow. Okay, to pull on the bow and shoot far off. In Jasher, it explains that it was Cain far off. Okay, um, and he ended up hitting Cain, and Cain died. Okay, this is how it explains in Jasher, but here it explains slightly different here. Okay, um, which kind of makes sense, but it says here, it says, "I have slain a man in my wounding." Okay, when I think about slaying a man in my wounding, I'm thinking about, as I read that story in Jasher, thinking about his eyes. Okay, so his eyes was failing him, and his son didn't know or couldn't see, and told him to aim because they thought it was an animal. Now, reading the story of the prophecy of what Jacob just said, and they kill oxen for fun or for sport. That kind of entails that's what they were doing, killing animals at that time for sport. Okay, so I have slain a man in my wounding, I believe, is saying, with the faulty of my eyes, I have killed someone. Okay. All right. But it also goes into, oh, I'm not going to even, because it doesn't even, well, it does say, I have a young man would wound me. Okay. Um, in the book of Jasher, also in the same stint, after they figured out that they killed Cain on accident, in his anger, or not his anger, but in his surprise, they said the word they used was he clapped, and in that clapping of being um, what's the word when you sad, um, remorse, or when they saw that Cain died, he hit Cain. He was um, he was saddened. I'm going to say saddened, and he was sorrowful. Yep. And they said he clapped, and in that somehow he struck the boy. Okay. They said he clapped. Whether it was he was angry or sorrowful and hit the boy because he was mad of what happened, I don't know. But it says here, and it says, and a young man who wounded me. Okay. All right. So in that, the boy died. Okay. And in Jasher, you'll see, okay, this next verse coming up, Genesis. Oh, it's the verse we're actually reading right now. This is where he came to his wives. Okay. All right. Because in Jasher explains that they disowned him because he not only killed Cain, but really they really disowned him because the son died. Okay. Um, they disowned him, and then they didn't talk to him for a while. And then it says one day, and this is how it explains it. Then he says one day Lamech said to his wives Ada and Zillah, "Hear my voice, listen to me, you wives of Lamech. I have killed a man who attacked me and a young man who wounded me." In King James, he says, "I have slain a man in my wounding, and a young man in my hurt." Okay, when he killed his great grandfather or his grandfather. All right. So this again, like I said, this is something that involves deep study. Okay. Um, but it does make sense to an extent, but to really get the full truth, it's going to deal with a lot of studying. Okay. Um, but at this point, after he talked to his wives, then they came back and lived with him, or was with him, but they didn't bear any more children with him. Okay. All right. Verse Genesis, um, Genesis chapter 4, verse 24, and it says, King James version, "And Cain shall be avenged sevenfold. Truly, Lamech 70 and sevenfold." Okay. So we kind of talked about this uh, last week, I believe. Kind of talked about this last week. And the reference that they gave for this, it says, first it says, "If Cain shall be avenged." We're going to go into if. Okay. And it says, Genesis 4:15. Okay, it just goes back into what we read last week, and it says, Yahuwah replied, "No, for I will give a sevenfold punishment to anyone who kills you." Then Yahuwah put a mark on Cain to warn anyone who may try to kill him. Okay, so, and this sounds like judgment came back and got Cain, and it could have been, well, a accident, but um you kill and be killed. Okay, so that's another thing that I have to look at too. um it's more specific. It says the way you died is the way you kill someone is the way you will be killed. Okay, and that is slightly different as well. Okay, so that's another study to have to go into a little bit deeper. All right. And 70, 70 times 7. All right. We're going to look at that, which we did look at last week. And it says, I'm going to go all the way into it. Matthew 18 and 22. Okay. And I'm going to start off with 21. It says, Then Peter came to him and asked, Adonai, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times? The Messiah. It says, No, not 7 times, Yahusha replied, but 77 times. Therefore, the kingdom of Elohim can be compared to a king who decided to bring his account up to date with servants who had borrowed money from him. So this is that story where the king, um, lent out money to a guy. I can't think of the name or what have you. Um, and he was put in jail, and then the king actually let him out. He just forgave him, right? Um, did he pay it off a lot less, or he just forgave it? He just forgave it. But the same guy that was let out, and this was millions, okay? In that time, this is millions of dollars. But as soon as that guy got out, he went to a guy that owed him money and had him thrown in prison. Okay? So the king saw what happened. He was like, I just let you out for $1 million, and you're gonna throw him in prison for that little bit? So the king got him and threw him back into prison. Okay? So this is what the Messiah is referring to. It says, therefore, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who decided to bring his accounts up to date with servants who had borrowed money from him. Okay? Matthew 24. All right, we're going to verse 25. All right. And is King James Version, and it says, And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For Elohim, said she, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. Okay? So Elohim said, she has appointed me another. All right? Um, Altogether, and it says in the book of Jasher or Jubilees, it says in a um, Adam and Eve had 9 sons altogether. Okay, most people think it's just 3: Cain, Abel, and Seth. All right, but it was 9 altogether. All right, and and again, a lot of people's like, well, who did who did Cain marry and who did Seth marry? They married sisters. So that's how it happened. They married sisters, and then after that, the tradition of what if you read the Bible, the tradition is, the son would go to the father's brother and marry their cousin. After that, okay. All right, we're going to go to and called, okay, and called his name Seth, and called. All right, Genesis 5, 3 and 4. Genesis 5, 3 and 4. Okay. And it says, this is right on the other side of the page. And it says, when Adam was 130 years old, he became the father of a son who was just like him. In his very image, he named his son Seth. After the birth of Seth, Adam lived another 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Okay. So it tells you right there that he had other sons and daughters as well. Okay. But it was more specific. All right. I know he had at least 3 daughters, 9 sons. Mm-mm. The other, they married probably um, Cain's children or Cain's lineage. Yep. All right, we're going to go into, for Elohim said she hath appointed. Okay. Genesis Genesis 4, 1 through 3. And it says, now Adam had sexual relations with his wife Eve, and she became pregnant when she gave birth to Cain. She said, with Elohim help, I had produced a man. Later, she gave birth to his brother and named him Cain. Okay, when they grew up, Abel became a shepherd, and Cain cultivated the ground. And when it came time to harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to Yahuwah. Okay. What I think they're talking about here, I'm going to go to another one. They're talking about the appointed aspect of it. Okay. Um, because Seth was appointed just like Abel. All right. Seth was appointed just like Abel, and they're emphasizing it here. Genesis 4, chapter 10 and 11, it says, but Yahuwah said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed and banished from the ground, which has swallowed your brother's blood. Okay, so he's not like Cain. Okay, but he's not like Cain, but he's more like Abel. Okay, so appointed or put. All right, last verse. Genesis 4, chapter 4, verse 26, New King James, or King James Version. And it says, and Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos, Nash. Then began men to call upon the name of Yahuwah. Okay. Then that's when they all started calling Yahuwah by name. Okay. Not God, not Lord, not any of those other things. By name. All right. We're going to look at first it says Enosh, okay, and it says to call upon the name of Yahuwah, or call themselves by the name of Yahuwah. Okay, so this is saying, if you look at, when I pull up the Sefer Bible, and we look at the names of the books, and we look at Jeremiah and Ezekiel and all of that, a lot of their names have Yahuwah's name in it. Okay, so they're referring here by either calling on the name of Yahuwah, or they are called by the name of Yahuwah. Okay, so the name has Yah in it. Okay, so a lot of those books, okay, the real names of those books have Yah in it. Okay, the abbreviation. But first, we're going to go to Deuteronomy 26, verse 17 through 18. And it says, you have declared today that Yahuwah, your Elohim, and you have promised to walk in the ways and to obey his decrees, commands, and regulations, and to do everything he tells you. And Yahuwah has declared today that you are his people, his own special treasure, just as he promised, and that you must obey all commandments. Okay, this is being specific, saying that they're calling, they're going to have to call on his name because and follow his decrees, commandments, and regulations. Okay, because that was his promise, because they're his special treasure. Okay, so they have to call on the name of Yah or Yahuwah. All right, here we go. First King 18, verse 24. And it says, then call on the name of your Elohim, and I will call on the name of Yahuwah, the Elohim who answered by setting fire to the wood is the true Elohim. And all the people agreed. Okay. All right. So calling upon the name of Yahuwah. Okay. At this particular time, this is Elijah against all 500 priests. Okay. Priests of Baal, which were also the priests that was under Jezebel. This is Jezebel's priests. So it was 500 priests, and there was what was the original reason? I can't remember why they was showing seeing who's, just to give glory to Yah, just to give glory to Yah. So all those priests, 500 priests, built an altar, and then Elijah built his altar, and Elijah said, okay, we're going to build this altar, all right, and whoever Elohim brings fire down on these altars, on the altar, is the true living Elohim, okay? And the 500 priests set up their altar, and they did all kinds of things, trying to get their Elohim to shoot down fire and consume this sacrifice, okay? They was cutting themselves and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and actually Elijah was mocking them. It's like, is your Elohim going in the bathroom or something? Like literally mocking them. And when Elijah did his altar, he told them to drench this altar with buckets of water. Okay? Drenched it. And when he called on the name of Yahuwah, Yahuwah sent down a fire and to consume everything of his altar that he built. Even the stones. Yep. All right, so calling upon the name of Yahuwah, okay? All right, we're going to go to Joel, okay? We're going to skip down Joel 2 and 32, okay? Joel 2 and 32. All right, this is one that's significant that I like. And it says, but anyone who calls on the name of Yahuwah will be saved. For some on Mount Zion in Jerusalem will escape, just as Yahuwah has said, these will be among the survivors who Yahuwah has called. So calling upon the name, those who call upon the name, okay, this is specific, okay, because we know Lord means other things. Calling upon the name of Yahuwah will be saved, okay. All right. We're going to go to Acts 2, verse 21. All right, reiterating just that. And it says, but anyone who calls on the name of Yahuwah will be saved. Okay. Again, Romans 10 and 13. Y'all don't have to go here. It's saying the same thing. For anyone who calls on the name of Yahuwah will be saved. These few verses that we went over today, it wasn't much. It was really a bridge to what's coming next. Okay, it started with a little bit of Cain's lineage, so that we know the difference between so that we know the difference between Cain's lineage and Seth's lineage, because the names are fairly close. But also, when you read this section that we read today, okay, and you read in Jasher, it fills in the blanks of who married who, okay. Um, Lamech, which was Cain's great grandson, I believe, or great great grandson, married those two daughters of um, was it Jared? It was either Jared or one of their daughters. So Jared had two daughters, okay, Adal and Zillah, okay, Ada and Zillah, okay. So those are two. So it actually fills in who married who, okay, um, between the lineage and where the people go. But it is so confusing. Also, in Jubilees, it all kind of intertwines. It is very confusing. One uses Jubilee years, okay. One just says, like the next chapter over, it says, um, after when Adam was 30 or 130 years, so forth and so on. The math gets really hard to try to keep up. I was thinking about maybe I should do this for y'all, but this it racked my brain. So I was like, oh, I'm on back up.